Chinese courtrooms this month were the scene for two trials prosecuting Christian businessmen for selling audio versions of the Bible. To talk about this in more detail is our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari, joining me once again from Los Angeles. Lisa, this is allegedly part of a new government crackdown to stem the tide on illegal publications?
Illegal publications and pornography.
The Bible? What?
Exactly. Look, this is part of the communism handbook, right? Take God away from them, take the books away from them, take any sort of knowledge or anything that will lead to them seeking freedom and thinking and gathering, and prioritizing family and God before other things. This is not surprising for where China is going, for where their leadership wants to drive the people. You and I were talking before, during the break, about how this is the norm now for China. There are churches and underground churches, and all sorts of missionaries and people who are sent over. But it's a risky job because the environment is so hostile towards Christianity, towards religion, towards Islam, and it's not getting any better. It's just that they don't want people to think that way, to gather, to get information from the outside world.
They don't want to gather, and it's nothing to do whatsoever with COVID-19. Lisa, a boat loaded with explosives attacked an oil tanker that was docked at the Saudi port city of Jeddah in what authorities are calling an act of terrorism. This is the latest in a string of strikes against the kingdom's oil infrastructure in recent weeks.
Yes, and it has everything to do with the region's reshifting of alliances. Look, this Shiite-Sunni war has been ongoing, overtly, covertly, and as tensions rise between the Iranian regime and the West, they take it out on their regional enemies and those who they believe are getting closer and closer to the United States and to Israel. And that is the nations that are warming up their relationships with Israel. For example, the United Arab Emirates just had a hacking job done by the Iranian regime as well. So when you see attacks like this is the Iranian regime's way of flexing its muscles in the region, going after regional enemies and those who are, at arm's length reach for them to be able to exert themselves and say, look, we're still in the game, even though you guys think that Donald Trump in the final hours of his presidency, will see, but what we believe might be the final hours of his presidency is pulling everything, every trick he can out to marginalize Iran. They will try to exert themselves more and more.
Iran's president has gone on record saying that his country would rejoin the nuclear deal within an hour of the United States signing on. Now, will that take place after President-elect Joe Biden is sworn in next month?
Yeah, so that has been something that Joe Biden has talked about, that he would get right back into the Iran nuclear deal. We have Democrat lawmakers writing a letter to Joe Biden saying, you should get back into the deal unconditionally. No preconditions. Don't ask for anything. Don't look at any of the details because the details don't look so good. But just go for it and sign that deal again. I have no idea why they are so gung-ho with normalizing relations with the Iranian regime. I mean, I have some idea, but logic would dictate that it's not the right move. And what President Trump did in May of 2018, the first thing he did was keep his promise to withdraw from that deal, because it's not anything that promises us any more security or safety. It doesn't stop them from pouring money into terrorism, and it certainly doesn't stop their nuclear program.
Why would the United States want to normalize relations with Iran?
Yeah, this continues the march of appeasement that President Obama started. That was the foreign policy of the Obama presidency, and of course Joe Biden being his vice president. And we assume that his presidency will look something like that, particularly regarding foreign policy. And that appeasement is to go and bow down and apologize to all of our enemies and say, sorry. We just want to keep things cool and let them walk all over us. And that's exactly how we got to where we are. And they delivered briefcases full of cash to the Iranian regime. They normalized relations with them. They loosened the sanctions. And what did they do? They turned around and poured that money into terrorism, into Syria, into Lebanon, into Hamas's pockets. So I mean, there are really no reasons to normalize the relationship with Iran. The people in Iran are suffering. They're advising against it. We know for a fact that it didn't lead us to anything better. It didn't get us anything, and they're saying to do it without any preconditions. So, look, this is going to be an interesting litmus test to see once a Biden presidency gets into the White House, will they repeat the same mistakes, or will they reevaluate the situation and say we need to take a different approach?
Homeland Security in the United States is warning that Russia may have hacked into federal agency computers. Apparently, the hackers may have infiltrated the systems by piggybacking on SolarWinds, which is a software used by the government and a majority of Fortune 500 companies. How high is the risk level for the American people right now?
It's extremely high. It has been very high, but extremely high because now we know that they have infiltrated. Before it was more of just the risk itself. In recent years, we have our enemies, and Russia, North Korea, Iran, China. Perhaps even Venezuela, piggybacking on the intelligence of the other nations I just mentioned, have been putting their money not into their military, but more so their cyber military, knowing that that is the frontier, that is the place where they want to put all their assets because that's where they want to get their information, their intelligence, and all kinds of information. But more than anything, they can put a stop to the infrastructures or the apparatuses at the White House, on Wall Street, our electrical grids, and the threat goes on and on. So they know that that is the vulnerability of the United States. And I think that this is a big wake up call for the United States to say, they're here. They have every ability to infiltrate us and to penetrate our systems without us even knowing, without them even stepping a foot on U.S. soil.
The outgoing Donald Trump administration imposed sanctions on Turkey due to its acquisition last year of the Russian S-400 missile defense system. And Lisa, the sanctions include a ban on all U.S. export licenses, visa restrictions, and asset freezes for blacklisted groups.
Yeah, Turkey has been a frenemy of the United States for many years now. On the surface, we're friends. They want to be a part of NATO. They want to be both a part of the European coalition, and they also want to be part of the Middle East. And because of Erdogan's movement more towards the Middle East, and when I say more towards the Middle East, more towards the militant groups in the Middle East, his actions both inside Turkey, which include rounding up of journalists, rounding up of policemen and judges and anybody who speaks against him, creating a power grab and fraudulent elections that would put him in power for many years to come. All of these actions, including becoming extremely aggressive with weapons, with getting very close to Russia, getting very close to Iran's regime, that is what makes President Trump reassess the relationship between Turkey and the United States, and not to continue with what is just a traditional relationship that nobody else wanted to really talk about or to disrupt.
The Trump administration has removed Sudan from its terrorism list. Lisa, it's a move that could help the African country finally get some international loans to revive its battered economy.
Yeah, it's a great move for Sudan as long as they play nice and they really step up. This also is in the same path to leading them to the Abraham Accords to normalize relations with Israel, to recognize Israel. Look, they're wearing their big boy pants now. They are now able to have a global relationship, whether it's with the United States, with Israel, bringing them into the modern Middle East with other nations like the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain, Jordan, and allowing them to really, step out of the dark ages and into the next era. Now, this again comes back to: will they stay off the terror list? Will they not allow those very malignant, influences within their country to influence them and to get back into the government, or will they really step up and play this new role that they've been given?
Now, Lisa, what's really interesting about Sudan, they're off the terror list, but still with Sudan, Russia signed a deal with the African nation, establishing its first naval base in Africa. So is Vladimir Putin looking at maybe expanding its military reach in Africa?
Oh yeah, the operative word that you used, Hal, expand. Putin is all about the expansion. It doesn't matter what continent, and hopefully he'd like to be on all of them. And now he has access to the African continent. That is exactly the handbook or the guide that Putin has been playing. He just wants to expand his influence, and Africa is a great place to start. There is such a vulnerability there. There's such a vacuum there with regards to having all of that influence and being able to go there and give them, for example, internet and running water and infrastructure and help with anything they need in exchange for owning them and having that access there geographically, as well as having all those people there, all of that intelligence, and a base for their activities as well.
Azerbaijan and Armenia have done a prisoner exchange. It was all part of their most recent peace deal between the two former Soviet states, Lisa.
Yes, this ceasefire peace deal has been shaky, but it has lasted. We had had a few false starts, and it's because both sides are so fired up, and this animosity between them will exist and will continue to exist. But for now, this has been brokered by international forces that came in and wanted them, and Russia, United States, all stepping up to say we need to have peace in this area. Too many lives have been lost, and now they will do a prisoner exchange. They will punish those who are the war criminals in this equation and hopefully move on from there.
According to the BBC, Azerbaijan has said it is charging two of its soldiers with mutilating the bodies of Armenian soldiers during the recent conflict. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, this is a symbolic punishment against those who went too far, who took this, and applied their own cruel punishments against their enemies. Again, showing that this is much more than going to war to fight for your country, but really going to war to mutilate the enemy. And in this case, there is a very deeply seated, animosity between the two. I know here in Southern California, there is a very large expatriate Armenian community. They have had many protests. There's actually even a hate crime where Armenians went into a Turkish cafe and destroyed the place. They beat up the employees there and the owners, and it's awful here in Beverly Hills, actually. So again, illustrating how deeply this is felt, even for those who are outside the region and really fighting and defending their people. So I think this is a great symbolic punishment of those who did this, so that it would not be repeated again, hopefully, and that they, fight fair or not fight at all, which would be more optimal.
Lisa, closer to home, the Electoral College votes are in. U.S. President-elect Joe Biden is set to be sworn in with the inauguration next month. But the Trump camp is not conceding just yet. What's going on there?
It's interesting because news came out about the electoral votes just as, and the same time as when we're expecting news about some of these investigations from several states that have wanted to dig up more information and to give us more details about potential alleged election fraud. Look, the only thing I would tell you right now is to don't watch the news, don't watch the mainstream media when it comes to this story. We'll just have to wait to see what happens inauguration day, who's going into the White House. Look, everything that has happened has been the mainstream media. It's not the mainstream media's job to put the crown on the president. It is the Electoral College's job. And what happens is they basically push a certain story. And it's very difficult to walk back that story. I'm not saying that that will be the case, but let's say if there is a potential to show some evidence, every American should want to hear that evidence, regardless of what side you're on, because this just shows our due process. It shows that we have a system where we will look into the situation, we will hear the evidence, and we'll have to wait and see.
Could you imagine if Trump got a second term? How many media outlets will have egg on their face? I mean, not just the media outlets, but so many political pundits, like everybody. Like if it flipped and Trump got reelected?
Yeah, and I think people are very concerned not just about that, but about how people will react very emotionally to it. And I think that that's really the danger here is to see where the country has come so emotionally against, either for or against Donald Trump, for or against Biden. And because of that, I think we've lost some of that semblance of due process and really having a free and open press. All of that has really been tossed to the side this time around, and it's you know, we all lose. We all lose, regardless of what side we're on. We lose when our nation, you know, really deteriorates in that way.
Amen. Political reporter and foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari, thanks for your time joining me from LA.
My pleasure.